Bom dia, boa tarde, boa noite, or whatever the case may be. My name is Marcus, and I am the host of the Black Brazil Today YouTube channel, as well as the blackbraziltoday.com blog, where I analyze Brazil from the perspective of race. So today, this is almost kind of like a part two of a video that I just got finished doing. Um, these two pieces actually go together. It's intriguing, just the developments of Black identity and self-esteem and Black pride as it's coming up in Brazil. So to name of today's article or video is called Brazil Never Saw Black People as Beautiful. The change of the self-esteem of Afro-Brazilians, and it's something that I've witnessed for the last few decades. So one of the first things I want to discuss here to kind of put it in context why the developments of Black pride and Black consciousness, Black identity, why these last few decades have been so important. Because like I said, I've seen some transformations that, just a few decades ago, it just didn't seem like it was possible. And this is because similar to what happened in the United States, everything associated with Blackness, whether it's our skin color, our hair texture, our facial features, whatever it might be, has been considered, animalistic, it's been considered ugly. We've been denigrated. And so fighting to have some self-esteem has been an ongoing struggle that we can still see in many ways to this day. And that's because, the power of the pen, the power of controlling a society and putting the ideas of what's good and bad, what's pretty and ugly into the minds of the population, and it continues to reproduce itself. So we see images in Brazil just everywhere you look, and like I said, the Black population, the Movimento Negro, the Black rights movement in Brazil has done an excellent job of developing this sense of pride and Blackness. Is something that I've witnessed over the last few decades. And this is important because why do we see the necessity of being able to address this position that Black Brazilians have on the social hierarchy, right? Well, it's because most Brazilians just consider that Black people are ugly. Even if they don't believe it, it's something that everybody knows as the stereotype, the image between what's attractive and what's ugly, what's beautiful and what's ugly. Attractiveness is considered people who look closer to the white phenotype. Those who look closer to the Black phenotype are considered ugly. So you can go to Google and punch this up. Just use the words negro e feio, which means Black is ugly. And you'll just see, you could probably get hundreds of pages on this very discussion. Here you have, is being Black ugly, right? Let me see, you see it there. This particular article is called Black Suffering. Everywhere you see negro e feio. Okay. Right here, this article from 2013, Black professionals describe memories of prejudice. Today, I know that I am pretty, but when I was a child, everything made me believe that I was ugly because the Black is ugly. And we Black people, or the Black, is convinced of that he is ugly. I mean, if you just use these keywords, if you can read Portuguese, it's everywhere. O negro é feio é ruim. The negro is the Black is ugly, is bad. Okay, you have also this idea that the texture of Black hair is ruim, which means bad. Cabelo ruim means bad hair, and that's something that you'll hear a lot. Also, a number of videos and articles that you can find online talks about what they call cabelo crespo, which in English that means kinky curly hair. And the question of Black people's hair being hard, which means, in Portuguese, they say cabelo duro, hard hair. They talk about cabelo ugly. They talk about, Black people's hair is supposed to be bad. So everywhere you see Black people around the world, this is the stereotype that we have. This video here is asking the same question. Is Black ugly? What else do we have? Let me see here. This is an article from 1978. The Black is ugly because of the color of the skin, and because of the kinky curly hair. And it just goes on and on. Listen to this right here. It says black children are more punished than white children. And it says, what is this? This makes children naturalize inequality and reproduce offenses, like when they say that the black is ugly, stupid, and have a bad smell. So this is something that you see. It's like it's embedded in Brazilian society right here. Being black is ugly. Branco is what is beautiful. Branco, white is what is beautiful. Beautiful. Let's say branco é que é capaz. The branco is capable. So everything associated with whiteness in Brazil is something great. Everything associated with blackness is something terrible, right? Cabelo de negro é ruim. The hair of the black person is bad. Besides being poor and black, he's ugly. So this, it goes on and on. So this is what I'm saying. Why it's the work of the Movimento Negro, identity politics over the last few decades has. I'm not going to say completely turn this around because it's going to take a while to completely eliminate the idea, this inferiority complex that a lot of black people have because it's been embedded in us. Okay. Let me see what I want to get into right now. Okay, let me go back to the article before I get to that one. Um, Traditional beauty contest. Now, this is something that I've talked often about on the blog and in the video channel, that traditionally Brazilian beauty contests always had white women. From 1954 up until 1986. In 1986, it took 32 years for the first black woman to win the Miss Brazil competition. Okay. Then after that, they went another 30 years. And I think it was 2016 and then 2017, 2 years in a row, black women took home the Miss Brazil competition, but still it's coming on 70 years. Next year will make 70 years of the Miss Brazil competition since 1954. There's been 3 black women. Okay. Arguably, at least 2 of them, which you could consider fair skin, but 3 black women have won the Miss Brazil competition. So what has happened is that black Brazilians took it upon themselves to start developing their own things. You'll see, if you go on the internet and use certain keywords, you'll find that black Brazilians have started to develop their own beauty competitions. They'll have the Mr. and Miss Black Beauty. You'll see competitions where black women who had the best afro. This is I don't know where the city of Bebedouro is. I have to look that up. But in this city, in several cities, I mean, I have a whole bunch of, photos of these competitions, Beleza Negra, what you see here, Miss and Mr. Beleza Negra. So Mr. and Miss Black Beauty. So they were having open enrollment for people to compete in this competition. And then you see several others in just different cities all over the country where, okay, they're excluding us from traditional black, Brazilian beauty contests. They always choose the white women. The white women are usually the overwhelming majority of the contestants in these competitions. So, hey, we need to create our own, this is something that black people need to take to heart anyway. And everything that we do, don't expect another group to come along and save you. If we want something, we have to do it on our own, right? Okay, so getting back to what I was just wanted the links that I wanted to show here, just at blackbraziltoday.com. This is from 2021. So a lady said, okay, so you see this black girl being crowned at a beauty competition, says this business of social inclusion is effed up. A young black woman denounces racial slurs after winning beauty contest. Here, she doesn't represent the Gaúcha woman. The Gaúcho is a person who is a native from the southern state of Rio Grande do Sul. The Gaúcha woman is expected to be white and beautiful, not black. Okay, this is the attitude. What's another good one I want to use here? Apartheid continues in Bahia. Now, Bahia is considered to be Black Bahia. It's considered to be the state with one of the largest Black populations and the center of Black culture in Brazil. But in this contest for 2014, it made headlines because in a 76% Black state, 75% of the beauty contestants were white. White, well, Brazilian white, we'll say. Some of these women were not just white according to American standards, but they were white according to Brazilian standards. This is the article that I had right here. So if you look at some of these pictures, I mean, you just see very fair-skinned women here. Now, I know some of you might look and say, well, those women aren't really white. Well, some of them are pretty close to white, right? Where do you classify as where white starts, where it stops, and where does black begin? It's hard to say, but I do see a lot of fair women who would be considered white in Brazil and outside of Brazil, but this is in a state like Black Bahia, okay? Which is the whole point of this article. So, traditional beauty contest, the development of Black beauty contest, right? Why do we need those? Again, let's look at this is an I think it's the it's a Black American woman. I think she might be a sociologist, anthropologist. I can't remember. But in her book, I think her name is Elizabeth Freeman, and she put out a book some years ago. When she did some research in Northeast Brazil, I think it was in Bahia. But listen to what this piece right here says. It says white Brazilians were a peculiar group in that they coveted American blackness while rejecting and degrading Brazilian blackness. They spoke to me about dirty Negroes who smelled and did not bathe, as though I was also not black. Right. So it actually goes into something here where she says, American blacks are better looking than our blacks. So the white people she was talking to were talking to her in openly racist views, sharing their racist opinions to a Black American woman as if she wasn't black herself. Like, blacks are dirty and they don't bathe and they smell. So this is what you get. So is there any wonder why we needed a black movement in Brazil? Because the society as a whole believes that black people are just not attractive. Okay. Then you talk about the kids coming up in the school system. So you have textbooks. It says, blacks are considered malandros, like slicksters, somebody who's going to take advantage of you. They're considered lazy. They're considered to have little intelligence. They're poor. They're inferior. So this is what they're finding in the textbooks. What it says here in the school textbooks, the negativity against blacks, when it's not revealed explicitly in the text, it can be perceived in the illustrations, right? Generally, the heroes are white. And, look at the description here. It just goes on. Now, remember, this is what we're talking about, what black kids are learning inside of the school system. In the school textbooks, let's see, we blacks are considered incapable. We are something negative. It's no use. To be black is ugly. White is what is attractive or beautiful. White is capable. White is what is going to get there in this society. So this is what the kids are learning in the school. So is there any wonder why it was necessary for the development of Black pride in Brazil? Because since the abolition of slavery, this is how Black people have lived under the assumption that they are inferior. Okay. So let me get into today's video rather. So Brazil never saw Black people as beautiful. This is I took bits and pieces from an article from the Folha de Sao Paulo newspaper. This is Djalma Campos, this guy right here. And so this is him talking here. He's talking a little bit about his self-perception and how he grew up. He's 52. He's a journalist and an entrepreneur who lives in Sao Paulo. He is another Black man who has come to see himself as being attractive and handsome. But to be sure, this wasn't always the case. He says, until I was in my early teens, I didn't consider myself a handsome boy, let alone an attractive one. All the attention during my teenage years was directed towards white people, both at school and on the street where I lived, he remembers. In his view, the Brazil of the 1980s and 1990s was far more racist than in recent years. One classmate, he recalls, seemed to show interest in him and started to converse with him after class. But what she said has stuck with him to this day. One day in a street next to the school, she sat down next to me, kissed me on the cheek, and said that she couldn't be seen with me. She said that Black people were considered feio, meaning ugly. I've never forgotten her name, but time has helped to fade this story. The country didn't see us as beautiful people. Negros retintos, meaning dark-skinned Black people like me, were synonymous with ugliness and also with violence. So many things that he pointed out here. First of all, as I've said, these things have changed in recent years, but as he said, you go back to the 80s and 90s, there was generally no pushback from Black people to challenge this idea that white people were superior, they were more beautiful, more intelligent. So I wouldn't say that how can I say this? He's saying that it was far more racist in the 80s and 90s. I'm saying Brazil is still very highly racist. It's just that Black people in Brazil these days are now willing to stand up for themselves. Whereas before, you had a lot of people would just lower their heads and just bow down in front of racism. Parents would not prepare their kids for what they were going to hear when they would go to school. They would come home crying because their parents wouldn't talk to them about how society looks at Black people. So these kids would go into a state of shock by how they were treated by their classmates as well as their teachers. There's a number of books that talks about racism inside the Brazilian school system. So the change in this attitude came with the construction of positive self-esteem when he became the DJ as a teenager at his class parties. At the time, he also started to immerse himself in books that discuss negritude, meaning blackness. He began to watch movies that featured Black people and also checking out and listening to music that strengthened his self-esteem. One thing I want to point out there is that when he was growing up, it's clear that you didn't have Black films, not in Brazil. He was probably looking at a lot of Black American movies that came out in Brazil, and they had subtitles or overdubs with Portuguese in it. Nowadays, I've been impressed again with it, particularly in the last decade or so, where you have this rise of Black cinema in Brazil. Now they're starting to get Black men and women lead actors and actresses in these films. They're having Black cast majority. They're having Black directors. But back in the 80s and 90s, this simply did not exist. Okay. So he continues. At family parties, the records and songs by Jorge Ben and Fundo de Quintal worked like self-esteem pills. I had never heard a song so clearly saying that Black people were beautiful as I heard in Jorge Ben's voice, he recalls. Now, Jorge Ben is one of my favorite Brazilian musicians. You know, his stuff from 1963 to 1978, at least in my view, I have all of his stuff from that period. I love Jorge Ben. This guy mixed a little bit of samba, and he put some elements of soul and funk in his music. You know, Jorge Ben is going to be always going to be one of my favorite artists. His song, I think from 71, 72, 73, somewhere in there, had a song called Negro é Lindo, which means Black is beautiful. Okay. So he's saying this is the first time he heard somebody say this. This group, this samba group, Grupo Fundo de Quintal, everybody's familiar with this group. They also express a certain Black consciousness, Black pride in their music as well. So this is what this guy is talking about. As his brothers had entered and graduated from universities, this also helped in his evolution. With more knowledge and people to look up to, my self-esteem was boosted forever. The more I learned about my history, the more beautiful I felt. Today, I believe I have managed to pass on to my children, age 14 and 16, elements that have made them Black with an intense strength of self-esteem that took me a long time to find. But they both seem to have been born with the self-esteem chip embedded in their heads. This kind of reiterates what I just said a few minutes ago. Years ago, Black parents in Brazil didn't speak to their kids about race. They didn't speak to them about being proud about, being Black, that you're attractive, you're intelligent, you're just as capable as anybody else. So kids would go to school unprepared. And when they would get slapped in the face with this racism, as their parents didn't protect them, they were just very vulnerable. The generation that's coming up now, like this guy just said, they're teaching their kids the idea that you are as good as anybody else within the home, something that just didn't happen 30, 40 years ago. So for Luciene Lacerda, this woman right here, a retired psychologist from the Federal University of Rio de Janeiro, as well as a doctoral student in education, activism and positive reinforcement has been instrumental in the change of the self-esteem of this generation of Afro-Brazilians. It's a continuous positive reinforcement that has been done a lot by the Movimento Negro, again, the Black rights movement in Brazil, a lot by those who considered that democracy in this country should in fact happen, which is to legitimize all the people and races in the country, she explains. Lacerda is also the creator of the 21 Days of Activism Against Racism campaign and the co-creator of the Center for Afro-Brazilian and Indigenous Studies at the Federal University of Rio de Janeiro. Lacerda says that in the 1990s, there were a number of people that gave their children African names. I have a story on the blog, this couple, this had to have been about 3 or 4 years ago, where they had trouble they had chosen an African name for their children, and they were having trouble registering it because I think the registrar's office wouldn't accept that they had named their child outside of the typical names that you have in Brazil. It's like you go to Brazil, and it seems like, I don't know, there's in some ways a lack of originality because a lot of people would just have the same name. It struck me that there seems to be a lot fewer surnames in Brazilian Portuguese than there were in, say, British English. Everybody there seems to have the same surnames. I don't know, maybe 30 or 40 surnames. And then you just have millions of people with the same first name, last name, middle name. So This couple tried to register their child's name with an African name, and they had trouble trying to get that done. That's another story. To reinforce history, to reinforce where we come from. My son, for example, is called Luan Tambo. Luan is an indigenous name that means the warrior of the moon, and in Yoruba, it means what comes from the sun. And Tambo in Mali means earth. So this has been a constant throughout this time to reinforce history, she says. For Lacerda, where whenever blacks are linked to the images of enslaved people, chains on their ankles and feet, even on days such as November 20th, Brazil's Black Consciousness Day, there is a not so subtle reinforcement of enslavement instead of the greatness of Africa and a continent and a culture that was not only already established, but formed so many people and had an influence on global civilization. In the past, drawings of people or cartoons of black people were all distorted, and didn't look like people. And nowadays, there's a reinforcement that school books can't reinforce racism. Racism not only tries to weaken the subjectivity of a black person, but also reinforces some kind of hierarchy as a human being for non-black people, says Lacerda. These issues that involve advertising campaigns, books, for example, they reinforce who they are to everyone all the time and not just to black people. These issues of the appreciation for not just black people, they are for a democratic society far from discrimination, she says. So as I said, it's incredible some of the things that I've seen coming out of Brazil over the last few decades, particularly the last decade, I would say. Black Brazilians developing their own things outside of the mainstream because they understand, like, if we want to pick ourselves up, we have to do this for ourselves because the dominant society is not going to do it because they want to keep us in the place that we're in. So I'm curious to know, what did you think about this particular article, this particular video? Brazil never saw black people as beautiful. Okay. So definitely want to hear what your thoughts are on this video. Drop a comment in the comment section. Like this video, share this video, consider subscribing to the channel if you've seen more than a few videos that you found intriguing. Definitely click on the notification bell so that you'll be one of the first people to receive my new videos when they go up. If you like this video today or you liked others, consider giving me a super thanks, or consider dropping a couple of dollars in my Cash app. You see it on the screen, the dollar symbol. Then you have Mr. Market 72. That's MRMARQUES 72. Every little bit helps. Appreciate that. I'm going to end this video here and just ask you all to stop by and check out the next video that I post.